All right, can I have the roll call, please?
Gibson, Kepler,
Here.
Kulkarni, Ormsby, here, Satterfield, Stoltenberg,
Here.
Wendland.
Here. All right, thank you. We had minutes from the meeting of October 18th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for approval of the minutes from October 18th.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from October 18th, 2023. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. All right, so good evening and welcome everyone. An audience of 3. It's kind of refreshing for a change, actually, after we've been through this
4.
this year. 4, okay. Even numbers. We are a Plan and Zone Commission appointed by the mayor and city council to recommend relative to site plans, zoning changes and such. We do have 4 people in the audience, so if you have input for a particular case, I'd ask you to step back to the podium when I recognize the audience and give us your name and feedback. We'd love to hear it. And with that, Greg, we will begin.
Mr. Chairman, tonight's first case is 23075. It's regarding Lot 2 Core Line Addition. It's a site development plan. The location is pretty much off of 28th and a half Street directly into this locale. It's Lot 2 of Core Line Addition. It has frontage on 28th Street. The proposal is for a 4,500 square foot building housing 2 contractor condominium units. The current designation is for urban light intensity. However, there's a proposal right now before the city council to change the land use to community commercial. And as you can see, the majority of the land surrounding this parcel happens to fall into that category. By changing that, it would meet with goal C of the comprehensive plan to attract and retain business in order to facilitate the rezoning of this parcel to C3 General Business District. Upon further evaluation, the parcel to the due west area here was also found to have been determined by staff in 1984 to be C3. So there's only one area tangential to the lot that actually is zoned R2 Single Family Residence District at the present time. This is the staff determination. This is the parcel in question here, and this is at one time part of a variance proceeding as well. At that time, Don Jones, who was the zoning administrator, came across some information that indicated that this in fact was a C3 zone parcel. And that's right now what we're looking at is that parcel in lot 2 here. What was going on when this was platted, essentially, the Core Line Addition was a grouping of right-of-way and other lots of record that were in fragmentation. And in 2017, this was combined into a 2-lot subdivision. At that time, being zoned R2, Lot 2 was required to meet a minimum square footage. So that's why the lot size is 8,500 square feet. The true front yard was established on the west side of Lot 2, and that's flagged out to out to 28th Street. 28th and a half Street had not been paved all the way to Lot 2. And that is why the south boundary and the north boundary are considered to be side yards. The rear yard is the east boundary. And we do have under a subdivision ordinance provision that this does meet that minimum 6,000 square feet and 50-foot lot frontage within the subdivision code. Board of Adjustment made some rulings regarding this parcel. First was to reduce the north buffer yard from 30 to 5 feet, and the setbacks essentially in the zone, or rather in the variance proceedings, regarded setbacks as they would gain relief from R2 zoning, and then C3 zoning for buffer yard setback relief, so that we made sure that under the current zoning, because the various proceedings occurred under R2 zoning, and those setbacks are more onerous than they are in the C3 district, that's how they were oriented. In the buffer yard regard, because in the future, that buffer yard requirement would kick in, because this will be C3 and the adjoining property to the north will be R2. And that's why the C3 standard was selected for the buffer yards. But this buffer yard to the north was reduced from 30 to 5 feet by the Board of Adjustment. Front yard setback was reduced from 25 to 12 feet. The west buffer yard, 30 to 12 feet, even though this now we found as we were doing more research is in fact zoned the same as this, really the need for that buffer yard is not necessary. Then a reduction also from 5 to 2 feet to accommodate the parking that is within this locale. And then a reduction in the rear yard from 25 to 7 feet. The proposed site plan is for, again, as I mentioned, these two condominiums, entryway, a drive, which will necessitate an agreement with the city about connecting that drive to our paving in our right-of-way. Handicap parking here, and then parking spaces here, and a means of entry going into both of these units. They have their own individual means of doorway and garage access. Access will always be off of 28th and a half Street. And we have water service stubbed right here going into the building. We have sanitary sewer. We have the perimeter surrounded in storm sewer so that the roof drains can be connected into this storm sewer. The water can be channeled out front and then sheet flowed off of the parking surface. The electrical will come in by means of the west through the flag portion of the lot to an overhead utility pole. And then we go to the thoroughfare and access issue again, as I mentioned, that there will have to be an agreement between the city and the petitioner regarding how that access will go in. This photo shows where that access terminates. The proposed site is up here. The access right now terminates here, short of where that parcel happens to be. No sidewalks are going to be required, as there are none along this parcel or along 28th and a half Street or any of the parcels joining that particular section, that right-of-way. Off-street parking and stormwater detention, the city engineers determined that there is no need for stormwater detention given the small size of this area. Parking spaces will be accommodated with 3 out front, and then there will be at least 1 in each of these particular structures. And then, as I mentioned, the stormwater will be accommodated around the structure and then sheet flow and dissipated through the parking area. And these are the elevations. This is the south-facing elevation whereby you have the doorways here, the garage doorways that will accommodate vehicles, and then access through a singular doorway for each unit up front. The north-facing elevation will be about maybe 4 feet above the ground level, because the way this is sloped, the entryway will be pretty much a full exposure. But as this goes and is built into the hillside, there will be a 4-foot extension up to this point here from the ground level. And as you can see, one thing that staff looked at is the nature of the site. This is a Google Earth photo, and this is State Street here, and this is the means of entry, and this is the site. But as you can see, staged around it, around this whole area are commercial uses for the most part. There is some residential over here, and there is a lone house up here, which is this structure located to the north. This was built in 1939 before we even had a zoning ordinance. And what we're looking at is the nature of the area around here, and that's why we feel as staff that this is an appropriate structure as infill, given what is going around here, pretty much as contractor condos, and you even have a manufacturer of automobile parts right in this area. And then you have the veterinary clinic here. Staff in reviewing this proposal would make a recommendation for approval with the following conditions regarding landscaping being forbidden, I should say, within any public easement areas. If necessary, and we have discussed this with the petitioner, he can stage his trees on his parcel, then there will not be a need for any agreement with the neighbor to the north. There had been some discussion about maybe transferring the real estate or the landscaping to the adjoining property to the north, but in further discussion, staff doesn't know if that is a necessary position. Again, I brought up the issue with the driveway connection, and then of course there's the general provision that this does not waive any other applicable provisions under city, state, or federal law. That being said, I would ask, are there any questions? Staff would recommend approval of this site development plan.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Mark, anything since publication or presentation in this matter?
We did get the elevations today. Greg was able to put those into the presentation for you, and I think those really show that rear
Yep.
elevation being so much lower than the neighboring property, which would relate to a concern that was brought up to staff and maybe this board or Board of Adjustment perhaps previously. And then also I would just note that Mr. Kulkarni did arrive and is on the record and able to vote as well, so.
Okay, great. Questions or comments from the commission with regard to this matter?
I just have a clarification of terminology question. When you said that the stormwater is going to be sheet flowed, what does sheet flowed mean as far as the stormwater retention participation? Brian?
It's just gonna run across the parking area. So there's on either side of the building there, there's a retaining wall. On the south side of the building there, on either side, there's that storm sewer that's kind of wrapping around the building. It'll just basically deposit onto that pavement and then sheet flow through the parking area and then down 28th Street. There's no storm sewer in the area, so there's no way to really make a connection there. So that's the option that we have.
Just following the impervious surface,
Correct.
pretty much? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Sheets kind of synonymous with surface. Yep. So can you pull up the elevation, Greg, if you would, please? And I see Scott back there, and I might have a question. So I do have a question. It's not that I might, I do. So when I look at the two overhead doors, which I heard would have access from the parking lot, and then I look at the site plan, it looks like if somebody were parked in the handicapped or over to the right side, how would somebody be actually driving through those doors, Scott?
I think the change of my elevation would have to change a little bit from where, we had some changes that staff required. I think I'm gonna have to slide that garage door over.
Okay,
I think that is correct, and I will get that changed. It's gonna have to move over because they required the handicap and it wasn't there before. So when that required, it'll move that door over.
and is there room, because I'm looking, it looks like there's 18 feet from the curbing or the edge of your pavement to the building. Is there sufficient swing-in room if somebody were parked there to get to that other door on the east?
There should be. You should have enough to swing in. According to the engineers, I had that conversation with them actually myself, and
Okay.
they claimed that should work.
That's the only question I had, others on the commission.
I have a question.
Yeah,
The sheet flow across the parking area, how does that work? Because this doesn't seem to have any kind of a sidewalk or a curb for those garage doors. Would that create any issues with the, freezing of water and all of that stuff?
I mean, certainly that's a possibility with the freeze thaw cycles. There is curb shown on the driveway there to kind of channelize that. It drains from north to south, the general topography there. As such, everything goes down towards State Street that way. So it would be on the developer's property, I guess. So yeah, they'd have some maintenance there, certainly.
Thank you.
anyone else from our side? Anything else you want to add, Scott, or anybody else in the audience?
No, I'm here for any other questions or concerns that anybody has. Otherwise, I mean, I think on the sheet flow, the good thing in our case is we plan on using asphalt for that area. So we'll have the availability to salt it, number one. Number two, it also doesn't freeze quite as bad and quickly on asphalt. So everything does slope quite a bit from north to south. On that map, I believe it's north to south. So I don't think we'll have a problem getting water moving at least. But in the winter, if we do have concerns with that, I think from there, we'll just have to salt it.
Yeah, and you got a southern exposure, which will help as well for that afternoon warmth. So, yeah, okay, good. Anyone else in the audience with regard to this matter? Nope. All right, back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number 23-075, subject to staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve case 23-075. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, 23075 is recommended for approval. Okay, Taylor.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Next case on the agenda is case 2373. It's a site development plan for St. Joan of Arc School, 6822 Hopewell Avenue. If you remember, we did have a subdivision, a final plat come before this board and was approved by council. The name of that subdivision was Our Lady of Lourdes St. John Vianney Edition. The site is one lot. The applicant is Joel Purcell, doing business as Russell Construction. This is a site development plan just for the school. A component of this, the future concept for this site will include a church, but we're just reviewing we do have some teasers of the concept, but we're really looking at the school right now. The school will be, the proposed school contains a pre-K daycare component and also K through 8, so that's elementary and middle school. So you have kind of 3 uses from a zoning perspective, but they're all school or daycare related. The currently adopted future land use map shows this area in our urban low intensity. We have some medium intensity across the street that's being developed as townhomes and single family, and then townhomes and single family also to the north, and then we do have a farmstead located off of Criswell just to the north as well. Current zoning is our R2 single family residence district. Schools are allowed in virtually, or most of our districts, except a few, so it's permitted use. Taking a look at the site plan, the site contains front yards on Hopewell Avenue and Criswell Street. 2 curb cuts are shown in the plan, one on Hopewell and Criswell. A surface walk is shown connecting to an existing bike ped trail on Hopewell. No pedestrian connection is shown to Criswell Street. Staff contends there isn't really a need for this at this time. Criswell is slated to be reconstructed in next year, 2024. But there will not be a pedestrian facility at that time. We'll still have a ditch, very similar to what we have in Forest Grove. So at this time, staff doesn't feel there's a need to put that sidewalk in because there won't be a safe facility for pedestrians to use. A refuse area is proposed, but does need to be delineated, so that's a staff comment. It is shown, it's slated to be right here. It's like a kind of a covered area, I believe, that'll have, it'll be screened, have the dumpster, I believe, there. Stormwater detention and water quality are provided on site. We have a large detention pond located on the frontage of Hopewell, and then there's 2 water quality ponds just to the west of that private drive off of Hopewell as well. So as you notice, the site plan being proposed is just showing the school and the parking required for that school and access. We do have a future concept that contemplates that future church, which isn't being reviewed tonight, but you can see how it fits in with the dotted building outline and some future parking. So the school is a 61,000 square foot school. Portions are 2 stories, some single story. And then that church is to the east of the school. The future concept does accommodates a fire lane between those 2 buildings required per the fire department. And then staff contends the plan proposes more than sufficient recreation space. We don't really have a metric for that for our schools, but we have a soccer sports field to the north. There's a playground area that'll be fenced in here. I think a paved playground area located there. And then there's actually kind of an interesting outdoor classroom component that will be open air in between, wedged kind of in the center of that building structure. So additional space obviously is to the west. And then you have some other space that's kind of reserved for the future church, some outdoor space and components. Taking a look at the parking. The current plan shows 204 off-street parking spaces. These do include some, what I'm calling short-term drop-off spaces or parallel spaces. They're not short-term, we're not gonna regulate that, but they're really designed for, parent drop-off at 3 different locations. So you have the entrance from Hopewell, you have some queuing space, so there's a wide enough lane there for cars to park and the cars to still pass that. The north area has a drop-off area, pickup area, and then there's a northeast drop-off pickup area as well. That parking plan does show 6 ADA spaces. We actually do need 1 additional space per ADA requirement, so that's also a staff comment. I need 7 for the main parking spaces. The future concept, so taking a look at that with the church as shown, we'll have a total of 330 spaces and including 20 ADA spaces, so there's more ADA parking on the church side proposed. So we'll have plenty of parking when, if and when that church comes through, and then there'll be some shared parking, of course, with some off, church services not during school hours, et cetera. Except the lack of 1 ADA parking space, the parking requirements for the school development are met. The landscape plan shows a total of 194 tree factors, quite a bit, and additional shrubs and flowers. This is meeting the code requirements. This is a large site, so it's got a lot of trees. So you can see that shown in the plan. Their parking lot has all the vehicular use area islands have the required landscaping, and then they have trees all throughout the site. This is currently a farm ground, so this will all be new trees. They won't be retaining the existing trees. So yeah, a lot of added trees here. Some 3D renderings of the site. There will be a church tower. Those are allowed per our code currently up to, I think, 60 feet, so that meets the code there. Kind of like a brick, I guess, Art Deco type of look to it. Some more 3D elevations. Staff contends the proposed development meets site development standards and code requirements, and staff is recommending approval of case 23, I should say 73, 6822 Hopewell Avenue, with the following 2 conditions: that labeling of that dumpster area on the site plan and providing that extra ADA space. I can take any questions.
All right, thank you for the presentation, Taylor. Mark, anything since publication or presentation?
Nothing to add on this one. I think Taylor did a great job in the presentation. Just a reminder, that's a sports field. It's not a stadium, so there's no parking associated with that. It's just grass that's marked for children's games and, sports. It's not a stadium there, so.
Very good, thank you. Questions and comments from the commission, please?
I have one question.
Yes, Ann.
Greg, or Taylor, sorry. I think this is maybe a typo. On the site development plan, on this document, that, I'll call it an island, a long island between the building and the major parking, the white line. It says water quality pond.
Over here,
No, just northeast of the
no.
building,
It's the white.
Between the building and the parking lot.
the big white island in the
Big white
parking lot.
island in the parking lot,
That is a water quality pond, that's
right
correct.
there.
Yep.
And the landscaping plan shows trees in there. I was a little puzzled when I saw it.
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a water quality pond called out there, and they do have storm sewer that carries that to the west and then south into the detention pond. So I'm assuming that based on the site plan, that's what we have going in. And actually, I have seen the calculations on that, so they are anticipating that being there.
Is that like a rain
It depends on what
garden?
type of landscaping or trees would go in there. There is certain types, I don't know if it's just shrubbery or what type of root system that has, a water quality pond does drain fairly quickly. So they could coexist, I guess, depending on the type of landscaping they put in there.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from the water quality's perspective is really that rainwater is being detained mostly in that southern pond. Those water quality, especially the parking lot water quality feature, is really separating that sheet flow going into it. So you're really just getting like a lot of times bioswales or common product and other things like that, correct?
And it's a good comment, and we can look into that and make sure that, just as far as the landscaping, the water quality pond is going to be there. I mean, that's going to be a feature. We can make sure, verify that the landscaping.
We may have some insight here. Please, we'll pick,
Hi, I'm Mark Miller with Bray Architects. Oh,
we pick you up back there? Thank you. I'm gonna shine a light bulb on this for us, okay?
yeah, that's all right. So, my name is Mark Miller. I'm with Bray Architects. And yes, the strip there between the parking lot and the driveway will be water quality swale. And we will have some plantings in there, probably not the extent of trees that we have shown now. There was a little disconnect between the landscape architect and the civil engineers, but we will get that straightened out. But the water quality island will remain in the project, and we will landscape around that, so.
Will that essentially be a concave type?
Slightly, yes.
Just to kind of filter?
It's
and-
not gonna be a pond per se, but it will have a little water control and a little filtering system as the water comes off the parking lot into the storm sewer and then into the retention pond.
Just a little unusual, you see something that might hold some water for a period of time in a parking lot where people could be walking through and
Right. Or
kids, yeah.
It's not very deep. It's,
Okay.
It's a very shallow. I think the concern was with the amount of parking area and again, because this site slopes from north to south, the water before or after it leaves the parking lot, we felt it needed some place to have a little cleansing activity before it wandered off around the rest of the building.
Yeah,
because of
makes
the
sense.
distance.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Other questions or comments from the commission? Janessa?
I had one for city staff. I was just curious about, on pedestrian trail access, it says, and you mentioned the repaving and reconstruction of Criswell is scheduled. You said 2024. This says 2026.
That's
It is 2024.
it's
Is it next year?
2024. Thought I
Okay.
made that change.
What the existing ditches will remain. Can you tell me more about that? Why when we're rebuilding it, we're not building
We're
it
just
out?
doing a full depth reclamation, similar to what we did on Forest Grove Drive there, I guess east of Middle Road, up to Criswell. So we want to keep those ditches open because we're not widening the pavement. We're not going to a curb and gutter section, which would require storm sewer at that point. We're just not at that point where we're doing that full widening and reconstruct of Criswell yet. So this will last us a while, hopefully 10 years until we get to the point, or whatever that time frame would be, until we get to that full reconstruct as the area develops.
So kind of a temporary improvement.
Correct.
Definitely improvement, I'm sure, when driving up it as it is now.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that'll
Yeah.
be appreciated, I'm sure, by all.
Something council has looked at, when they do the capital improvement project planning process every year, and they prioritize different roads for upgrades and improvements. It is definitely getting a lot of attention from council. It hasn't been moved up the list to that level where it's a full rebuild with storm sewer yet.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
And I believe at one time it was scheduled for 2026 and it was moved up by the city engineer. So that's in reaction to a lot of the development trends we've seen on Criswell. I think this body's approved. All the land out there is pretty much been had a subdivision or site plan approved in the last year or two. So that's really been a concern. That'll get into a safer road. Forest Grove can handle the traffic that's been taken right now at that location. And I believe it's expected that same with Criswell. Now, at a time when the sidewalks do become available, I just don't know how, when, or if that happens. Staff would definitely recommend a service walk, but
Right.
at this time, so leave that up to the commission, I guess.
Thank you.
I got a follow-up question on that. So when the sidewalks do come in, who's paying for it? Because if this was a normal subdivision, the developer's paying for those sidewalks we put in.
This road, this is a private drive, so this is private property, we're not maintaining this road, this road here.
No, I'm talking about
He's
Chris,
talking about
Criswell.
That would be in the right of way, just like we maintain the Hopewell Bike Ped Trail. We plow that, all of the above. So that would be the same situation for Criswell when that becomes,
I think he's asking, would we
Who's
assess,
paying?
would we assess the
oh,
property owner for
assessment.
sidewalk?
Will it go on their tax assessment? Is that what you're saying?
It can, we have done that. We have not always been consistent in doing that.
They don't pay taxes.
So,
Well, that's true
again,
too.
those are policy decisions that might be above the stripes I have on my sleeve, but yeah.
Well, actually, that was a good point. They don't pay taxes, so I guess I bring that question up again. Is
We'll
that something
look
that should
up to the big
be?
guy
All
and we'll just, hope it works out.
Yeah, I'm not going there on this one. Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
One
Good-
more.
good question,
I've-
though.
I've got another
Yeah, go ahead.
question
Considering.
regarding Criswell and the future. I do see coming out onto Hopewell, we've got room for a turn lane. It's in there, but I don't see that on Criswell. And why wouldn't we want to make sure that was done up front? Because
Are you talking about the private entrance
the private entrance out onto
onto
Criswell.
Criswell? So basically, we have to generate, I think it's 300 trips per hour before we kind of trip that, that turn lane requirement. So that's the reasoning behind it. With what we have going on here with the school, that would not be triggered.
Is that over every hour for a 24-hour period or?
Would be,
Okay.
So then I'll just make a suggestion to the school to save themselves some money and put it in now instead of waiting and putting it in later.
Yeah.
Which they're gonna end up having to do, especially if they build the church.
Once the church comes in.
Might not be required, but definitely going to be necessary.
Functionally, it'll be well worth it, yeah. And along that line, I'm really glad to see, however it came to be, that we've got some queue spaces for pickup and delivery, especially on the pickup side. We've seen so many issues around town with the queue when they're waiting for especially picking up kids in the afternoon, and it looks like good circulation and space for doing that. And I would just want to say also, just in your planning purposes, making sure you've got enough width of your drives for cars to go by after they pick up kids and all that kind of thing. Ease of motion around the site is definitely an advantage these days. So, but glad to see it. And I like the idea of multiple pickup points as well. Great idea.
And Chairman, if I can add to your comment.
Yeah.
It was explained to me the practice for, I guess, Lord's right now and how the school plans to have their drop-off is parents will drop their kids off at one of those locations, and this is a fenced-in yard. So during seasonally acceptable times, the kids then can wait there, so you have drop-offs happening over a longer period of time, and then they kind of wait there until they're let into school, so you kind of have an extended, I'm not sure if that happens at our other schools, but that might also alleviate some of the queuing.
Yeah.
At least for drop-off, pickup is a little different, but.
I'd like to see it. Other questions and comments from the commission?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just curious to know what's happening in the northeast corner there. We show a pavilion, and is there going to be any pedestrian access to those areas, or is it
Are you
just?
referring to on this slide right here?
Yeah.
So those, this is what's really under consideration. This is what's going to be built as part of the school. Everything's shown on this plan. This adds in, it contemplates that, I'll call it the future concept for the church. So you have the church outline, the church parking lot. There is a pavilion and a
Stations of the
station
cross.
and cross, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I can't read it on my screen. So that'll be part of the concept for the church. So that's what's there.
Informational only, not really for review.
Just to follow up on that, this being a big parking lot, there's absolutely I don't see any pedestrian access, safe access from any of those areas or even the north parking lots to the school or other areas. Is that something that needs to be considered?
There is one, so you have you have a sidewalk following the drive from Hopewell all along here. And then you have pedestrian pavement surrounding
Right.
the building here. Is that?
Yeah, I see that, but nothing from the parking lot or anything up north. Nothing is
So
Like
they-
a
they would-
walking
like a
aisle
walking
out of
aisle
the
or
parking,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what we see a lot of times on these site plans, especially with parking lot striping, is they can be really creative with parking lot striping to try and create pedestrian walkways and paths. we don't plan that for them as staff. That's really on the private sector, the private developers function to do, but I would suspect that their parking lot striping is gonna probably be a little more specific than the very general layout you see there. And we can certainly talk to them about that, we can have that conversation. By code, I can't force them to do it. Certainly, they've been really easy to work with and taken all our recommendations, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were thinking in those same ways as you are, so.
And Mr. Miller can correct me, but I believe really this parking lot is designed mostly for a lot of employee parking, correct?
Employee parking and for those activities in the evening.
Yeah, and so there's a gym here, so there'll be basketball games, et cetera. And then you have right here, I think delineated is the daycare, pre-K parking, so that's closest to the building, so you have the shortest distance to walk. And then the Q park, we'll call it the parallel parking, that's located in those three areas. Those are at designated drop-offs, so you do have large entrance walkways and then the surrounding accesses to those playgrounds. So I don't think they're trying to push the circulation of pedestrians, these are students, kids, to be dropped off and not going out to that parking lot.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any more comments from the audience? Appreciate the input on that. All right, back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for approval of case 23-073, that's site development plan, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve case 23-073, subject to staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. 23-073 is recommended for approval. Okay, Taylor, next case.
Thank you, Chairman. Next case is case 2377. This is a site development plan for Spring Hill Suites Marriott Hotel located at 5235 Competition Drive. Bit of background, the applicant is Dan Huber of Frontier Hospitality Group. The request is for, the site plan proposes a 4-story, 86-unit hotel. Development is located on a 2.4 acre lot. This lot shows 91 parking spaces. This location is what I'm calling the island, so East Mill Road, north of Forest Grove. There are a lot of Betplex expansion development. I will note the Board of Adjustment granted a variance, case 2376, allowing a total of 16 spaces to encroach into the 8 feet into the front yard of this site. This front yard setback, it's a C3 zoning, so normally 20 feet, they're allowing 16 spaces to encroach by 8 feet. Future land use currently is shown as community commercial. Adjacent areas are also community commercial to the surrounding parcels. As mentioned, the current zoning is our C3 general business district, and we have similar zoning districts surrounding the site. The proposed plan, as mentioned, a 4-story, 86-room hotel. The lot contains 2 front yards, both facing Competition Drive. The plan has 2 curb cuts onto Competition Drive, one solely on the lot located to the north, and then we have I'll call it a shared entry to the east. Surrounding developments are also accessible through parking drive lanes, so we have an access down here, so you can enter some of these commercial retail restaurant establishments that are being built right now in the area. Screen dumpster is shown on the site, located in the southeast corner of the building. So right here, it will be accessed as kind of this large turning area on that private drive. Stormwater detention is provided off-site for this location. There's regional detention that was built and contemplated for the development in the whole Betplex expansion area. Look at the parking. The plan shows a total of 91 off-street parking spaces, including 4 ADA spaces. Those red circles are showing where the encroachments are occurring. There will still be streetscaping, trees, and lawn. There's still room for that. One service walk is shown, located just to the north of that canopy drop-off pickup area for the hotel. So that will connect to a existing, I think, either proposed or existing, bike ped trail that's gonna follow Competition Drive. And then, as mentioned, those proposed encroachments. I added this to give you the commission a better idea of all the happenings in this area and how this fits in. It's a bit blurry, but as I mentioned, that island area, this is the final development. All the other developments have been approved by council and recommended for approval by this commission. So the hotel is noted there. And then across the street, we have the Iron T Golf Complex, future home of new ORA Center, Orthopedic Center. We have the indoor sports facility that was recently before this commission. And then some more empty, there's 2 lots, I believe. Well, we'll say 1 lot because we have another lot under review on the next agenda item. A couple lots just northeast of this development on Forest Grove Drive and Competition, and just a couple areas up here for development. So it's really filling in, just kind of wanted to, it's helpful to get, put all the pieces.
Where's the McDonald's at in that?
McDonald's is right here,
Right next to it, okay.
right to the west, yep. There are, I believe, cross parking easements available, so they're for these lots. McDonald's does not have that, but they do have sufficient parking for the proposed development.
I just recall they had some bus lanes and things set up on their site plan, and just trying to envision the rotation of buses and things within that category there. So it'll come in that center entrance. That's the entrance for both those lots, right?
Shared, yeah, it's a shared entrance to the north, and then the only other entrance is the buses could come in from the east, honestly, and kind of flow into here, I guess back up or go around and pull in.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, they could come in this way
Okay,
and go down there. This is a larger entrance as shown in the plan. Go back. It does have 3 lanes. So you have one entry lane and then 2 left turn and right turn lane for exiting. One going to Forest Grove Drive and the other going north on Competition that will eventually hit the roundabout on Middle Road.
no canopy out there.
No
canopy at the pull-up and check-in area?
Oh, no, there's definitely a canopy.
There is a canopy.
I'll get to that.
Just looked like it was open there.
It's just, that's the floor, the footprint. That's the footprint of the,
Yeah, I was just looking
it's a
here.
dotted-
That's the pad and structure.
there's a dotted,
See it.
dotted delineation there.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Landscape plan. The plan shows a total of 19.5 tree factors and additional shrubs and flowers meeting our code requirements. As mentioned, the Board of Adjustment granted a variance which allows additional, that variance, the consequence of that variance, allowed extra spacing between the building and the parking spaces nearest the building. So really add a pedestrian access sidewalk around the building. In addition, you have all these shrubs, plantings around the building, even out here. The real reasoning behind that, the hardship for that variance is the layout. We have roundabouts out at this location on Forest Grove and Middle. The spacing for roundabouts is really determined by the engineering discretion by the engineering department, and there's extra spacing required for roundabouts when compared to a normal intersection. So that created that entrance kind of pushed to the north, which took potential parking area from that location. So they had to get a little creative for the site layout at this location. Some 3D renderings. This shows the canopy right there.
Got it.
And the character will be similar to the other developments occurring in the area. This is not an overlay district, so the city doesn't have any requirements for design characteristics. But we do contend that it matches the other proposed developments occurring in the area. I do believe there is an outdoor area, like a patio, right there right outside the canopy. It's pretty common for similar developments. Staff contends the proposed development meets the site development standards and code requirements and is recommending approval of case 2377. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Taylor. Taylor, very comprehensive. Mark, anything? Nope. Okay, questions and comments regarding this case from the commission?
I have kind of an obtuse question.
Okay, let's go obtuse.
Okay, let's all go.
All right, I'll go there with you.
In the renderings, there's a monument sign, very tasteful, well-designed, looks very nice. It just made me think about that area and how well it's being developed and how typically in an area like that near an interstate interchange, we see mega signs that are 5 stories in the air. Is that something that we're going to be seeing in this area at some point in the future? Is that, how does our code address that?
We have height limitations in our code, I believe.
Also off-site signage restrictions as well, so if you wanted to,
That too.
you know, have some off-site company, pick an insurance company that you wanted to put a billboard up for, that off-site signage would not be approved at this location under our code. And so we've had this come up before. Our code has protected us against that. And then there's also federal law and state law relative to distance from the interstate, and signs that get too close to that interstate then fall under their review process as well,
Okay.
which is rather limiting. So I don't think that's a risk. This developer has never, ever contemplated that to us. It's been other tenants that have bought buildings and maybe thought they could do it, but it really is a no-go. It's
Good.
not a problem.
Yeah, and that sign is shown right here on the site plan. So that behind setback line, so really how our sign code works is where that location sign is it on the property or not? The type of sign, we have monument signs, we have pole signs, and then we have restrictions on site distance, so we have to make a safe entry so you can see both directions. For this area, it's a very long way to the interstate. The interstate's way up here. You will have a 2-story building from ORA right across the street, which would probably obstruct it anyways.
Yeah.
For a 30-foot sign, I think is our maximum right now. But don't quote me on that.
All right, thank you.
And while you went there a little bit too, I just want to say, kind of for the record and my own perspective, but to the city staff and whoever designed up there, it's awesome. The curb appeal, the flow. I did see a guy going backwards in the roundabout yesterday, but there's still a learning curve, but it looks awesome up there.
One
So
mistake in a roundabout, your planning commissioner sees it.
it was, I've had them before. I had 3 actually. It was a guy in a Prius from Illinois, so I just say that. So, but it does look awesome out there. I think you guys have done a great job. The curb appeal is superb, so love to see it. Yeah,
Sure the city has that on a camera somewhere.
Yeah.
it was a,
Lots of things that are on that camera.
yeah. All right, anyone in the audience with regard to this case? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jason Stewart. I'm here representing Frontier Hospitality Group, the owners of the hotel. Zachary Eccleston is here as well. He's the civil engineer on the project. We're just here to answer any questions, so I just thought I'd introduce myself and throw that out there if there are any questions for us to
Yeah,
address.
no, thanks for doing it. It looks like a great development. The design elements and everything, you know, the current kind of woodsy looks and whites and things, it looks awesome. So, yeah.
Well,
Looking
thank you for
forward to
your
having it out
consideration
there.
and your partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, anyone else with regard to this case? All right,
I have a,
yeah.
I'm not nitpicking on this, Taylor. I'm just trying to say, when you showed the parking encroachment, I think the driveway also encroaches.
We
in there.
do allow that.
We do allow that? Okay, because
think
the
of
driveway
some-
were
there's
within
some- Think of drive lanes, drive-throughs. We do allow that. It's that permanent parking. It's defined in our code. So,
So that's not designated parking or anything?
no, that is not. We have parking here and here. There is parking actually over here as well. I will add, this isn't isn't required by code. The city hasn't, of course, we have permits for electrical, but they are anticipating, I believe, some charging stations at this location. We're seeing that trend across many developments. I'm not sure if it's going to be next to the building or across here, but that was discussed, being discussed, correct?
Correct. We are looking at charging stations. The plan right now, and we actually are putting them in at our Courtyard Hotel that is set to open in a couple of weeks. They attach to the building. So that would be the current plan, is to have car charging stations attached to the front and to the back of the building.
The cable's expensive to run out to the end of the parking lot.
And you actually lose a lot in that
Yeah.
length. So we learned that lesson the hard way a little bit with our courtyard. Those are set aside away from the building, and they won't be as efficient as they otherwise could be.
Yeah, yeah. We're on a learning curve all the way around there.
Yes.
Yeah, good
Are
to
they high
see.
speed?
Out here, we're planning on some high speed, yes.
Great. All right, anyone else? Okay, good. I'll take a recommendation then.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve case number 23-077, subject to any staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve case 23-077, subject to staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye.
Okay?
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. 23-077 is recommended for approval. Okay, Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. Next case on the agenda is 23-78. This is a multi-tenant commercial building located on Lot 2 of FG 80 Holdings 4th Edition Site Development Plan. So this is right across the street, by the way. Applicant is Kevin Kellner, doing business Focus Real Estate Development. The plan proposes a 4-unit commercial building with 2 drive-through aisles. The proposed uses not identified at this moment by the applicant, but they can contain retail, restaurant, office based on the underlying zoning. The future land use map designates this area as community commercial, as well as the surrounding areas. Zoning is designated, is shown as general business district C3, same as the surrounding areas. The site plan. We have one front yard at this site, facing the west on Competition Drive, slightly on Iron T Way. Development is accessed via 2 curb cuts onto Competition Drive, using access easements on adjoining lots to the north and south. So you have, the lot lines are right here, you have an access located here. And then to the north, you have a shared access, which that is the parking lot, the southern parking lot of the Iron T Way golf course or golf complex. We do have a service walk proposed from the parking area going west to a proposed or currently built bike ped trail. A screen dumpster is shown on the southeast corner of this lot right here. Take a look at the parking. The plan shows a total of 91 off-street parking spaces, including 4 ADA spaces. This is a 6,000 square foot building. So given that, it does have a lot of capacity for some of the higher intensive uses like restaurant, potentially even bar. Staff will have to monitor supply of parking. We do this even after site plan approval. So when we get building permits, we have to check off, this is how many spaces you have left. Usually the last tenant gets the least. So we'll monitor that at the building permit application stage. Drive-through aisles are shown on the north side and south side of the building. So right here and here, going opposite directions. There is sufficient stacking, 6 cars shown for each drive-through aisle. I'll try to describe the general circulation of design of this lot and the parking area is counterclockwise. You have angled parking on the south. It's really encouraging the cars to kind of either go into that drive-through aisle or continue clockwise. And if you're coming in from the north, continue counterclockwise. This is the current floor plan. Like I said, it's just, it's multi-tenant, so there's some adaptability here, but it's 6,000 square feet. Units are varying sizes as well. The landscape plan shows a total of 10 tree factors and additional plantings. This is meet our code requirements. Due to the geometry of Iron T Way, private drive lane technically, and Competition Drive, a public right-of-way, there's actually a large lawn located to the west of this on the front yard. I will note the drive-through aisles have hard drive-through islands, I guess they're called, to kind of separate from the surrounding parking area, and those do show either lawn or planting on those. Some building elevations, they look very similar to the developments just to the west, which were located south of that, the hotel I just previewed. And staff recommendation, staff contends the proposed development meets site development standards, and we are recommending approval of case 2378. I can take any questions.
Yeah, thank you again, Taylor. Mark, anything from your perspective? Nope, good, all right. Back to the commission, questions and comments? I have one, if you could pull back up the site plan and let's revisit for a minute the queuing for the drive-throughs. I just want to make sure I've internalized that. And I see on the one it's got arrows, so
This shows those cars stacking.
yeah, that's fine too. So in what I would describe I don't know which, well, it is the southwest corner where the road's coming in, we've got it curving, and it shows the cars coming kind of from the north down to the south. I'm just wondering, there's not gonna be people kind of trying to, I'll do it, looking at that one, swing in and try and hit that queue for the southern drive-through. Follow where I'm at?
So you're saying instead of
Yeah, right. And if they were queuing, and it looks like you got a few cars you can do there, but that would kind of block up potentially the circulation. The other one seems to be a little more open, but I recognize we can't live sufficiently without drive-through in our current world, and COVID, it's a ticket for admission these days. I get that. Just like to see that the flow goes. So is the thought that they will come in and around and then get back into the queue versus try and diagonally cut in there?
There's a lot of options for coming up here would be an option. Going around that way is an option. It meets, our current code has 6 as our minimum stacking requirements and that's drive-throughs. We don't delineate types of drive-throughs. So that's.
So again, kind of goes back to similar questions about moving pedestrians or moving cars through
Yeah.
private.
Yeah,
You know, we count on them to do good signage, good striping, and be thoughtful in that process. We can always work with the developers throughout this process as we're seeing it, from paper to reality. I don't think we can control it from a code perspective. I
Yeah.
do think we have the ability to also talk about making those a little bit easier to bail out of. Because if you're the third guy in line and you decide you really don't want to be there anymore for whatever reason, you don't want to start playing bumper cars to get out, So maybe a little work in the field, so to speak, to provide some type of bailout. So I think these are very nuanced questions. Could this be a problem? Yes. Luckily, I think we'll have a thoughtful developer that will help us address these issues.
yeah. Okay,
One important factor I want to point out, Chief said can chime in, but we do have emergency access, so that should not be queued from this location for any type of vehicle to the south side there. And from the north, it's going to the west, so we're going this direction. We can get from the north side as well.
I saw Kevin and Zach making a plan. Do you want to tell us what you're thinking for this area with the traffic flow?
Maybe they
may
were
not be
discussing,
fully formulated. Yeah.
they've discussed
Sorry
in
to
the
put
last.
you on the spot, but I am curious because what what you said, Roy, makes a lot of sense to me on how it could really kind of create an issue.
Zach Eggleston, IMEG, civil engineer. I guess we're just discussing possibly like fanning out the parking just to give more space around those drive-through entries and all. Kind of hard to describe this up here, but that's something we can look into. We can obviously work with the city and work to best utilize this area for those drive-throughs.
I don't see an Atomic Coffee queuing problem up here. You've got plenty of interior space on your private drive and everything. Just looking for the way to keep the flows going. The better the flow, the better the business. So, yeah, but it's, as Mark notes, it's in your court, but yeah, appreciate that.
If you put a Chick-fil-A in there, then you've got,
I was thinking
Just depends on
Chick-fil-A
what
up
goes
there,
there.
yeah.
So
You need 3 drive-throughs.
then you need
Yeah, you need 3
3
drive-throughs there for that, so yeah.
No parking, just
He's only got
drive-throughs.
2/3 of a Chick-fil-A there, so yeah. Although double-sided, that's kind of an idea there, 2 on,
The
yeah.
whole thing could be Chick-fil-A. You have 2 drive-throughs.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, one
Yeah.
on each side. They need one more, though.
And, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, we digress. Thank you.
appreciate it, yeah. Anyone else out there in the audience with regard to this matter? Nope. All right, we'll come back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number 23-078, subject to staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve case 23-078, subject to staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. 23-078 is recommended for approval. Okay, then we have item number 8. There's no documentation, but that's you, Mark?
So Taylor's going to take item number 8 is commission update. Again, we've talked about making commission update truly a commission update, so that's what we're doing, trying to give you information to help you be informed at the dais, so to speak. Taylor's going to give you a couple notes on the comp plan and annexation. Those are really the same thing, so A and B are kind of going together.
Yeah, hold on. We had, item 8 was 23049,
sorry.
Glenbrook Circle
consideration.
South- Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of you. Glenbrook Circle South was deferred at the applicant's request.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Mark, I think do we want the extension though? I can,
Extension. Thank you. I'm too excited about this. I gotta come.
I'm excited to hear
jumped
about it,
ahead.
No
but
idea how excited I am about this conference.
we're getting a feel for it, so, okay, good.
So,
do you want me to take that? I
yes,
can,
if you would, because
Sure.
apparently you know what's going on, and I don't.
I'm glad someone does.
This is a pretty simple one, which is
Yeah.
why it doesn't have a full write-up. But as you recall, there was an amended site plan for the Quartet area in the Glenbrook South development. When you amended the site plan to really separate the stormwater from the Quartet building, there was a time limit, and it required a site plan to be approved for recommendation by November 18th of this year. And we've been working with the developer diligently. It's a complicated development. There's also some potential impact of the FEMA flood maps that have just come out preliminarily. We think that it could affect the floodway. There would be less floodway, which would affect how much density they could have on their project. So we think, given the fact that we've been working with them, this came up just at the 11th hour, I think that we would recommend a 6-month extension on the time limitation that you had on case 2297. So really all it would take would be, if you are so inclined, a motion to allow a 6-month extension for case 2297. And staff would be in support of that.
Yes.
We've all gone too far to not go there,
Yeah,
so.
right.
It's a complicated
Yeah.
project.
Yep, understood. Any discussion needed on that case? We have a motion
So moved.
to approve the extension of the time frame for case 22-097.
For 6 months.
For 6 months, and we have a second. Ann and Scott. Okay, all those in favor of extending the time period for 6 months additional time for case 22097, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Is this recommended also then in this case then?
It's still
Yes, it's
recommendation,
recommended.
yes.
Then that case 22097 be extended for a 6-month period for the site development plan. Okay, Mark? Get at it, man.
What I said before still holds. So Taylor's going to give you a couple quick updates on the commission update that I think you'll find informational. It'll be a good lead in to our November 20th open house on the comp plan,
Yep.
Which is from 6 to 8 p.m. here in downtown Bettendorf at the
Be
Water.
there or be square. Yep.
That's right. I will be there with bells on. So will Taylor. He's got a couple slides for you here. So I'll let him do that. And then I have one more item I'd like to give you
Yep.
before we get out of here.
Thank you, Chairman. I shared this same presentation with council on Monday. Today's Wednesday, on Monday. So I'll try to be a little more brief. But we have a few items going on. As you are well aware, we have a comprehensive plan update occurring. So I'll refresh you on some of the key components of that, why we're doing it. The annexation map was also discussed by council on Monday. I can brief you on that. And then we have 2 annexation areas that I will kind of zero in on and give you the details of those. So the comprehensive plan update. As a refresher, why are we updating this plan? There's been lots of changes in the city, new growth. We've had new census data. We're really verifying the relevancy of the plan's vision and goals, and they're not changing. This is an update, not a rewrite. We have housing trends that are changing market demands, as we're all aware. We have some new development focus areas that weren't quite contemplated in the former plan, the current plan. That includes the Betplex area, which we're seeing case after case come before you. And we're really trying to get this plan updated so that we can move on to getting our zoning ordinance updated as well, but this is the first step. And that's outlined in this process here. Once we get the new comp plan adopted, we can start, we have started, I should say, but in true, we'll have input sessions. That'll be a lot of work, a lot of details, get that done. And that affects how we do the subdivision process and site plan process, of course, and then also affects construction. That's kind of the process flow for development in the city. This is our, when we started the comp plan and all the different activities, we started back in January of this year. We've been meeting with RDG, our consultant that's been working on the plan with our staff. We've done data collection earlier this year. We've had a website and a survey. That's that online interactive map that you can click on, put a comment. It's been very well attended by citizens within Bettendorf and outside, because we have many amenities that are attracting people from outside the city. We've been doing group input. Mark's been going to, and all of us actually have been different civic groups, Rotary Club, school groups. We met with the developer, a group of developers that chose to attend in this room and really got some great input on development in general, and that range from our large houses to the multifamily. So we really got a good spectrum of some feedback on what's proposed in the plan. That'll be used in the comp plan and the zoning ordinance. We had individual updates to council. You were invited to attend the joint session back in July. We had an update in October and just an update on Monday. We're having an update with you right now. We will have a draft of a document draft on Monday for you to look through, and then of course take home and find comments or errors or what have you. So this isn't the final draft by any means. This is our first full draft. We're trying to elicit comment and feedback from our commissions and council and the public. As mentioned, the zoning code, the RDG has reorganized it, just sections really, but the content hasn't really changed yet, and that's what we'll be diving into once we can get the comp plan adopted, and we'll be working on that in 2024 with zoning input sessions, and then a future draft and adoption, similar to what the process we're doing with the comp plan in 2024. So what is not changing in the comp plan? As mentioned, our goals, the visions, we surveyed council and commissioners and really the goals and the vision of the current comp plan are still valid. The concept of DCAs will remain, that adaptable use, zoning use, so that's in our zoning ordinance, but having it in the comp plan is still referenced. And then wholesale text rewrites, it's really not changing the structure of the plan. There's some reorganization, but updates to data, projections, of course, for population, new numbers, but we're not rewriting the plan from scratch. What is changing? Future land use map, I'll touch on that. We've shared that with you and we've had, I believe, over 6 versions of it through the first one proposed, then multiple iterations. The annexation map, which I'll touch on a few slides later. We have some different sub areas. So these are areas within that are that RDG and staff have kind of taken a closer look at. Middle Road, for instance, and Corridor, an undeveloped area in the city right now. Our I-80 interchange area, the Magnolia Hawthorne area, and our downtown area. Growth projections and demographic data. These are some excerpts from the draft plan, just looking at housing data. What was the previous plan used data from 2010. So back then, our Bettendorf house, median house value was at 164,000. In 2021, we're up to 244,000. So the numbers are changing. So it's definitely relevant for the plan. And then text updates as needed for different plans have been updated, or we had a new parks plan, and we're going through another park plan update right now. We've had new hazard mitigation plan. We've got a lot of things happening that all feed into this plan, because this is the top level, kind of the comprehensive plan as in the name, and it collects all those different efforts going on in the other departments across the city, and tries to give the full vision of the future for the city. This is the draft future land use map, not the final draft. I'll note a couple points here. Number one is we changed some of the names of the future land use categories. We added 2, which were shared at the meeting in July. Those 2 new categories are a low-level, low-intensity commercial use. So think corner store, maybe like a chiropractic clinic that's in a neighborhood surrounded by single-family housing, something that has very low or minimal negative externalities. It's truly a neighborhood commercial use that aligns with neighborhood light, which is currently our urban low-intensity use. So that's aligns with we have 3 commercial uses really, and then 3 kind of mixed residential uses. Another new category is conservation subdivision. This was proposed for really areas of the city that have either significant floodplain, significant environmental assets, high topography. This will need to be codified in our zoning ordinance, so that we'll still need to tackle that. But the idea is to allow for different types of building products, residential primarily, but promoting, incentivizing developers to either through performance density standards or other methods to really keep significant portions of that development area undisturbed. We feel that this is happening throughout other cities in Iowa and throughout the Midwest, but it really is promoting, not trying to put significant grades and which increases erosion and also increases problems for people downstream. And also preserves some of the green space, the trees. We have some really great woodlands in the northeast area and the eastern annexation area, and for their future generations. So those are our 2 new areas. We did rename some of them to. Currently we have the same name for our DCA districts in the zoning ordinance, and we have the same exact names for our future land use zones. So you have urban high intensity land use, and you have a urban high intensity DCA zoning. So we want to make it, we got a lot of comments from developers. I think we've gotten from commissioners and council. We're changing the names we haven't got to the zoning yet, but we're changing the name. So Instead of urban high intensity, we now are calling it urban activity areas. It's truly urban. We have mixed use, taller buildings. Instead of urban medium intensity, we're calling it what it really is. It's a mixed transitional use. It's transitioning usually from high to low or low to high. So that's what we're calling our orange area. And then neighborhood light, which is primarily residential, but we really brought in that neighborhood commercial, formerly our middle zone, that lighter zone. We don't have a lot of it, but there's the potential for maybe a couple lots, maybe being for a very light commercial use that could make some trips shorter for some of these residential developments throughout our city. All the other zoning, or not zoning, but land use categories remain the same: industrial, community commercial, parks and open space, greenway. And then development reserve is our brown areas really we're not contemplating or projecting to be consumed land consumption by the 2045. And as a reminder, that population we're projecting based on past trends, 57,000 people by 2045. That's given, and I think that's like a 1.7% annual growth rate. Where's the document? As mentioned, we're draft editing. Draft editing is being conducted by RDG and our staff as we speak. Well, most of us are here. We have the community open house on the 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. We'd love to see you there at the Waterfront Center. They'll be shared at the open house, and then we can, as I want to reiterate, that edits can be made after the meeting. It's our first full draft. Any questions on the comp plan?
No, it's good. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Next topic, our annexation map, that is changing. Some members of council, well, let's start with our current annexation map. This is our current annexation map. The annexation map, as a reminder, is a tool. It's consistent with our future land use map, but it's really to validate any proposed annexations, voluntary annexations. The City Development Board will ask this if an annexation proposal comes forward. Is it shown in our annexation map? So it's really what this map is used for. The current map shows our annexation area north of our city boundary, does not contemplate anything east or farther west of Utica Ridge Road. This was adopted in 2017, and I think has been in some form, a similar form, for at least a couple decades. The comp plan draft, we'll call it, as that existed for most of the summer and fall, showed a new area east of Criswell. So that west of Wells Ferry Road, north of Forest Grove, that's an area. And then east of Criswell, all the way to Wells Ferry Road, except for areas that are currently developed. We have a Fenwoods subdivision just south of Wells Ferry Road, and then some larger single family, really what you think of as like a large lot conservation subdivision type of developments north of Valley Drive. So that was it. That was the proposed draft for much of the year. Areas north of I-80 remained unchanged, and that was what we had. Staff did receive comments from council members on draft edits to this map. Those edits, they felt that their area should be added west of Utica Ridge Road. So we proposed this addition as shown and highlighted in yellow. This area is in the Spencer Creek watershed largely, which flows, Spencer Creek flows on our north side through Bettendorf, and all the other areas remain the same as that draft plan. That's how this looks like. This proposed alternative is what we're going to show in the plan. It still needs to be adopted by council, but it is what staff proposed as an alternative in response to that input that council gave us. Staff wasn't recommending this, but council really wanted to see this, so that's what we're showing. There's a couple points added that only portions of this area can be sewered. It does have some limited access. And we do not feel it will be developed prior to 2045, so it will be shown as that development reserve in our future land use map. Other cities do have annexation maps. And like I said, they're a tool that's not as probably important as the future land use map. We're not showing development in this area. It's a part of the comp plan. So we have some overlapping occurring in this area.
Little turf battle coming up. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Comes a rumble. Here we go.
So that was just just putting all information out there. They were adopted at different periods in time. Davenport adopted theirs way back in 2002. So really, they haven't updated theirs in quite some time. Eldridge, I mean, they really picked Spencer Creek as a natural delineation. So that's where it is. There's not, and Chris can kind of add to this a little bit, but there's really no repercussions from a planning point of view from this map overlapping. To be annexed, you still have to go through the process. It's voluntary. It needs to go through, it's really the landowner's decision. It has to be contiguous, can't create islands. Chris, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's a good summary. This particular map is not, doesn't mean that, we have dibs on particular property or Davenport does or Eldridge does. It just, all this is for, as Taylor said, is that if we did have an annexation in this area, that we could say it's consistent with the annexation area map of our comp plan. And in our strategy for annexation, it's that it's market driven, it's voluntary. Annexations change when it's in an urbanized area of another city, so it requires another step in going to the city development board. So I think the whole process here, our process, Davenport's process, the state process, is to make sure that these annexations make sense. And I think one reason that I think it would make sense to go a little farther to the west is that we could potentially, I believe, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, but sewer a little farther to the west than what the present line shows. So if that's the case, it would make some sense that some property west of Utica would come into the city of Bettendorf. This is obviously a long ways down the road, but I think, I think this makes sense, and the map is not binding on anybody. So I don't have a problem with the proposal to go a little farther to the west.
Put more blue out there and negotiate back from there.
All right.
So we are going forward with this in the plan and the draft plan, but like I said, it still needs to, we'll have to, just a refresher on the comp plan adoption process, that will come back to this commission. It's required by state code, and then have to be adopted by council. So you will see, once we get a final draft, after the input, after the open house, probably, hopefully, next few months timeline. And we have the required public hearings, of course, for that.
And we can provide you, depending on how you like to read and consume information, we can provide you, paper copy or a digital link to go and read through the plan. You're gonna find, while the organization is different, we've gone to a screen viewable layout, so it's, instead of being portrait, it's landscape. That's just how the world is. But you'll have time to read through the whole thing before you vote on it if you want. You're gonna find that a lot of the information is very similar to the last time you went through the big process, the whole big plan. It's gonna be a familiar friend. The data is gonna be updated. Some of the names are gonna change for these zoning or future land use districts, but it's gonna be a very similar document in feel once you get into it.
Great.
And I guess I want to touch, we did have comments from commissioners at that joint session, and from council members, and we've had it from the public, and development, all of our different groups. So some of those changes I mentioned, those iterations of this map, staff and RDG kind of proposed a bit of a conservative on a density level map initially, especially near Forest Grove Drive, and some along our Mill Road corridor. We got a lot of input that we think and we feel that the public feels that there's a need for more density, there's a need for more housing, there's a need, that was a big, a lot of feedback, common feedback point. So you'll see that really north of our currently developed area and on the Middle Road corridor, you'll see a lot of darker or reds and high density or mixed use land uses prevalent. And you also see a kind of a mirror image north of 80, which is south of 80 on the Middle Road interchange, kind of an potentially mixed commercial entertainment node. So that's really kind of what's driving, that's market driven. That's what we're getting feedback from. Other areas in town, there's some changes, but not a lot. A big component of that was really identifying our civic and public areas. So you see a lot more blue on the map. These are schools and churches that we feel are gonna be there for quite some time. So there's no use in showing them as potentially redeveloped to residential or commercial. They're currently either our public works building, city hall, stuff like that. Just wanted to point that out. And speaking of annexation, I'll talk about two areas. We have an imminent annexation occurring. This was a proposal that came to this commission through was a case back in March. There was some delay. We had to work out some of the sewer details. But this location is just east of our border, north of Forest Grove Drive and west of Wells Ferry Road, south of Interstate 80. We have a public hearing scheduled on the 21st, so that's next week, next Tuesday. And then council's formal approval of 86.21 acres of land for annexation into the city.
Taylor, just drop back on that one for a second. I'm curious that you got a little nub going north of 80. Is that because that's where their ownership is? It seems like a natural boundary.
It's that's just the city, that's the Interstate 80 right away.
Oh, okay.
Really, we were forced to either take all of it or none of it, and we don't maintain it, we don't, it's just
Okay.
DOT's preference on how we show our, and if we did not take it, then you'd have a line, you'd have a boundary that would kind of go like this, and then this, and then this, so,
Okay.
that's really the explanation behind that. And then you have easier to describe legally boundaries as well on the center line of Wells Ferry Road, and then follow the western boundary of the right of way, northern boundary of the right of way. This project, so the proposed development, as a refresher, includes 70 plus single family homes, a commercial, like an RV storage development north of the creek, just south, kind of a little hard to develop area south of the interstate. And then the future site, the school has gone into contract for the site for a future school on the southeast corner, proposed elementary school at some time in the next 10 years is what they're, I believe. It's really based on how we're developing as city, because this school will service those developments that were coming before this commission on Criswell and east of Middle Road, that elementary school district. It's a growing area. And also want to touch on part of this development, a new lift station will be added in this area, but adding this lift station will also take two current lift stations out of service. So we'll have a loss of a lift station, which is good, less maintenance. This lift station will also serve areas, our development north of Interstate 80. So that area in yellow will be served by this lift station, and that lift station will serve the proposed development, Spencer Hollow subdivision and Sterling Woods subdivision. So it's a pretty big deal, because that will be the first time we'll have sewer access north of 80, which will open up development to that area. As Chris mentioned, you can see the proposed sewer lines. A little area goes north or west of Utica Ridge, but once Spencer Creek starts going north, the elevations or the sewer depth doesn't work out, I believe, for that.
What is the timeline for this lift station?
I believe Brent is working, I mean, there's contracts, it's designed.
Now,
It's undergoing.
the works.
It's
okay.
a longer process though for DNR permitting. I think it takes a couple of years or a year even, at least, right?
Yeah, it'll take a bit. I wish Brent was here on that one. He's honestly
But
been working on all that.
it's
so-
happening.
It's happening.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
the
is.
process
It is in
is
the
done.
process, I
I
can
think
tell you
next
that.
spring, there will be,
Oh, there'll be
yeah,
dirt moving,
some,
yeah.
yeah.
So this isn't,
This is
45
imminent. We're
years,
talking about some
2045.
imminent, when I say
Development
imminent,
that we're
yeah.
showing you can't occur without those lift stations. So
Sure.
the time horizon will be around that development,
Yeah.
which is in 2 or 3 years easily.
I mean, I think you'll expect to see some related proposals for this development, next year. And then typically a development takes, a couple years.
sure.
That's with current sewer access, so, this is definitely imminent, it's happening. So yeah. And then our other area, this is the area east of Criswell, we're calling this more of a near term, a little farther out than imminent, but not long term maybe. And this is an area, east of Criswell, south of Forest Grove, so it cannot be, sewered by that lift station based on just gravity flow. All that gravity flow goes down to Valley Drive, US 67. Historically, this area wasn't, was deemed infeasible to sewer, but we took a look at it. Part of it was some planning purposes. With this proposal coming in and a school being across the street, the market's really driving demand for that area, shown in pink. A lot of that area is also undeveloped. So the county has been holding that area for development in a city, being we're the closest city. Their land use, their comp plan policy is to drive development into cities, so it does not have to be on septic. That also, the consequence of that is smaller lots. They don't have to have very large lot sizes. You can also have mixed uses, commercial uses. This McClure Engineering conducted a sewerability analysis of the area east of Criswell. Initially, that analysis looked at the whole pretty much Pleasant Valley area, but a lot of that is already developed. You have Stony Creek, a number of other subdivisions up there. So we had them go back and really target the area shown on the map. They devised 4 sewer basins shown in green, blue, yellow, and red. Those 3 of them were deemed are recommended to be sewered by some trunk lines, which would not require a lift station. And then the red area is south of 67. This is really low, contains significant floodplain and topography, and has been deemed really not feasible for sewerability without additional lift stations. But that is consistent. We're putting this in the area in our comp plan for annexation area, and there's a lot. This is the background work, why we're doing this, the analysis occurring in the engineering department. There's other questions to be answered, of course, so we're still in the very beginning process. But we just wanted to update you on some of the things that are happening. I think that's all I have. Do you have any
Great, thank you.
questions?
Appreciate it.
A lot there.
A lot happening.
Okay, you gotta dial it up. I'm gonna be old by the time that happens. Yeah. All right, good
Just run my
stuff.
slides for me?
Sure.
I'll go quick.
All right,
Maybe a little longer than I meant for tonight's meeting to go, so I apologize. I've sent you a couple memos on this issue. This is something that comes up a lot. I kind of want to put some information behind a common citizen concern of is my property value. Something's going to happen to my property values. There is no crystal ball. I can't predict anyone's property values. I don't have that skill set, but I can tell you what data post-development has said. And 2, albeit anecdotal locations, but I think there's enough here to maybe suggest a pattern, so go ahead. Just a quick area of analysis, and you've got these memos. We looked at the Maple Glen 4th Edition, a segment of that neighborhood that is right across the street from Aldi and Quickstar. Quickstar came in 2019, Aldi came in 2021. The Maple Glen neighborhood was there well before that and established. Kind of a townhome duplex villa neighborhood. And then we also took a look at Greyhawk 1st Edition, which is now flanked by mostly townhome development. There are some single-family homes in Quail Hollow, but The Tanglewood Place is totally townhome development, and Quail Hollow has a few single-family homes up against the border of Greyhawk, and then it goes into a townhome villa-style development. And in both of these cases, and in many others, not to pick on anyone, the citizens' concern during the public hearing process is my property values will suffer. I don't think the data suggests that. In fact, I think it actually suggests the opposite, especially for the Maple Glen folks. And if we could just go to the next slide.
We were actually referred to as immoral for approving the adjacent to
Townhouses.
Greyhawk. Yeah,
If anybody knew me that well, but yes.
yes. Which I took some exception with at the time. It's like, okay, I'm not immoral, but I'm glad you're going to vindicate me now, so
Yes, sir.
I hope.
So Maple Glen, the chart, let's just look at the chart. The chart shows you in orange the average sale price and then the average assessed valuation. We only have really two ways to look at these values, property values, without going and getting, someone to come in and do an assessment for us and pay somebody to do it. So we look at recent sales data, we look at average assessed valuation. There have been multiple properties sold throughout the years of 2021 through 2023. 2019, we didn't have any sales data because there were no homes sold during that time frame. But they all sold for higher than the assessed valuation, and no property in this neighborhood has shown a loss of value. And in fact, when they did sell, they sold for more than their assessed value. And the closer in time you get to today, so the closer in time you get to that recent development across the street, if you will, the higher those assessed values. So, is that correlation or causation? I don't know. I'm just telling you the data say that nobody's house has lost value and nobody sold their house for less than the assessed value. In fact, they've always sold it for more. Now, the flip side of that coin is they're paying higher taxes. So they may not like that, but they're also making that up, if you will, on the sale of the home.
I think that's a point I
Average,
made.
yeah. Average assessment in this little neighborhood, this little piece of this neighborhood, are up 25.5%. Average assessed values from 2019 to 2023. The citywide, based on our finance department's research, is about 18% in that same time frame. So they're doing, quote, better. If you like paying taxes, they're doing, quote, better on the property or home. So you can go next slide. Greyhawk is a similar chart, not quite as drastic. The value of the home here is much different. So these are mainly $1 million homes. But they all have sold. The few that have, and it's not dozens and dozens, but the few that have sold have always sold for higher than the assessed valuation in the years shown on that chart. If there's a year not shown on that chart, it's because there was no home sales during that year. So they've all sold for higher than the assessed valuation. They're at about 14% in Greyhawk in assessed valuations increase from 2019 to 2023. So they're actually a little bit less than what the city did overall. So again, I think my house went up 18%. I'd be happier right now paying taxes on 14% than 18%.
And one of my understanding too, from talking to the assessor, is that the higher dollar homes go up by a lower percentage.
Yeah, I was just going to go
So,
there.
yeah,
I
so-
agree.
I don't have, very good point. So, but again, I'm certainly not seeing a negative trend at all, and probably a positive trend. And maybe, to Chris's point, when you do get at the top end of the housing scale, the swings are less, perhaps. That's true. Next slide. So just a quick summary. Property values have increased in both areas subsequent to the adjacent development. This has been demonstrated through assessment and actual sales data. I would say this is, at worst anecdotal, perhaps maybe showing you a trend.
Sure.
Here's how I would suggest you apply this information. In rezonings, we have a test. We have a 7 or 8 part test. One of the things that you are asked to consider, and the word is you must consider the impact or externalities on surrounding properties. It doesn't say how you consider them, good, bad, or indifferent. You have to think about them and make a decision. And I think there's always going to be winners and losers and some goods and some bads. But certainly, you have some information now to reflect upon when you do consider future developments and rezonings that may occur. On a special use, really, this is a BOA power, Board of Adjustment power. It also has a test, very similar to the rezoning test. But it uses these words exactly. Shall not cause substantial injury to the value of the property in the neighborhood. Certainly, if there was a special use consideration for any of these, I don't know that there was. I don't think you can say there's been any substantial injury to any property value in those neighborhoods. In fact, you would argue the opposite, just based on the data. So just some things there, I kind of wanted to be in the record. I know you've read the reports. I won't do this to you every meeting, don't worry, but I wanted you to have that while we had a little bit of a lull, looking ahead to the next set of rezonings and things that might be coming at you.
No, I really appreciate that. It's tough sitting here when people are basically accusing us of taking money out of their pocket by virtue of decisions we might, or recommendations we might make here, even though intuitively, we don't think that's been the case. I don't believe it's been the case. And now we've got some data that supports the fact that it's not been the case. One of the other things I think kind of maybe a next step on this, Mark, that might be nice to see. I talked about it to a couple of people before the meeting. We've had a number of developments that have been very controversial, and it's going to ruin the neighborhood. You're killing animals at their habitat. It's going to look awful, those kind of things. I'd love to see another angle on this with some of those types of things, saying, here was the homeless encampment in the woods before, and here's the new development with the assessments and the high-quality standard of living and some other things, and the overall elevation of the appearance of the neighborhood. I think that's a good story to tell as well. So somewhere in your spare time, something like that would be appreciated as well. Because I think when I look back and around town, there are a number of things that I know were very contentious here, and the results have been very positive. So I think we can tell that story as well.
Yeah, and I also want to keep us honest. I mean, I'm not trying to cook the books or provide some slanted view. I want to keep us honest. And if we're seeing trends that we don't like, we should then address those through code or
Absolutely,
decision-making.
yeah. Transparency is good.
I would be happy to look at, maybe some key developments and kind of do a before and after snapshot for you. So that's something.
We just talked about the East End on the other side of Greyhawk there. That was a perfect example. It was a disaster. I just drove on the way down here, down Devil's Glen, and past the new apartments down by the Duck Creek. They got the lights on and everything. It looks amazing compared to the
What was there before?
junkyard
Right.
that was there. I know there was so much animosity about that, but the result is, and guess what? There's cars all over in the parking lot. People want to live there. So I'd love to see some examples of that as well. We're not doing a bad job.
I would just like to add one comment to your information, Mark. I reviewed this Greyhawk issue, and based on the information that you gave us, there's 6 houses on Greyhawk Drive that back up to those townhouses. And in 2022, 3 of those properties sold. So the owners made a decision to leave because, for whatever reason, we don't know why.
Potentially, yeah.
I can't try to assume why. Maybe because we were immoral, I don't know. But the data that you've provided shows us that they were not negatively financially impacted by that choice. So everybody has a right to choose to leave their neighborhood. I'm aware of people that live out by the new commercial development at Forest Grove and Devil's Glen. And they don't like that, so they're selling their house. Well, that's their choice. But I don't think we're having a negative impact on people with these developments that we're talking about. And the other thing that we talked about, you mentioned housing trends, Taylor, and we're seeing more and more apartments because that's where the demand is.
That's what I think is interesting.
And there are so many people who comment to me, we're making a mistake because we're building multifamily everywhere in Bettendorf, and that's not what Bettendorf is. Well, we're trying to appeal to the market demand, and I think we're doing a really good job of it.
But if you had bought the small Maple Glen home duplex 15, 20 years ago and decided to sell because of your aging, ready for some other type of living style, and Aldi and all those amenities coming in, I believe, this is not true analysis, this is my belief, your property values went up because the next person that's gonna move in there is gonna be able to walk to Aldi if they
Right.
want to, walk to the vet clinic, do all those things, and they don't even have to have a car to do
Right.
it. And there's a whole part of our society that is really interested in that, so. I digress, but. yeah.
And Roy, I 100% agree with you. I think all the people that we listened to talking about the raccoons and the deer and the squirrels that lived at where Dan Dolan's doing his development, or Kevin by Slavin's Manor.
Yep.
It's a remarkable improvement of that corner. The homeless, whatever, I mean, it's an improvement. It's definitely an improvement.
And I might add that with our continual growth north and east, Criswell, for instance, I don't believe has any land left west of Criswell. I could be wrong. I think it's all spoken for from, it's been approved for your plat. There's less and less spaces that, so infill development will be
Right.
probably more common.
Like what Scott brought to us tonight.
So I think that's something that will be proposed more often than probably passed.
Awesome, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, staff, again, for everything you do. A little longer than we anticipated, but
It's all
good
good.
stuff. We appreciate it. We're adjourned.